Oh, so far away, Nisha. One of them days.
Yeah, it definitely feels like...
It's a day to talk about Shrek.
Yay, Shrek!
Shrek is a film about a 9-foot-tall ogre who WWEs the shit out of an entire army's worth of soldiers and rescues a princess because he wants to be left alone. Basically, he's a modern-day millennial hero. Whilst iconic today, the character of Shrek as we know and love him is the result of several dramatic overhauls, which included redubbing the entire movie 3 times and spending $4 million to make him Scottish.
I'm pretty sure it's a well-known fact that the original voice of Shrek was going to be Chris Farley.
Yeah, the original actor who was going to play Shrek was the late comedian Chris Farley, who unfortunately passed after completing basically all of his dialogue. And whilst it's often reported that there was enough dialogue recorded by Farley to make an entire movie, just having all of the dialogue very often isn't enough to make a movie, especially an animated one where you might have like rewrites or changes, which couldn't really happen when the guy voicing the main character is fucking dead. And that necessitated hiring a new person to be the voice, which is where Mike Myers came in. But something we need to address first is whilst Chris Farley was the original voice actor for Shrek, he wasn't the original choice to voice the character. And do you know who was the original choice to voice Shrek, Nisha?
No, I don't think I know this.
Okay, think crazy. Think just wild, crazy actor who's known for an eclectic range of roles, who acts the shit out of every role they've ever done.
I'm going to say Nick Cage.
Nicolas Cage. Yep, Nicolas Cage was the original choice to play Shrek. They approached Nick Cage and asked him, do you want to be Shrek? And he answered, what's a Shrek? And they responded, he is an ogre. And Nick Cage flatly turned the role down because, and I quote, I do not want to be drawn as an ogre. That was his entire fucking reason. It's like, I don't want to be drawn as an ogre. And this actually got brought up with Nick Cage a couple of years later when he was voicing like the main guy in the Croods. And they asked him, oh, didn't you nearly play a similar character once? And it's like, it's this big, like, hulking ape man, like from like the past. And then, yeah, they offered me the opportunity to play Shrek, and I wasn't about that because my thinking was, once I'm drawn as Shrek, that's how kids will see me, and I don't want that. And to be fair, he's got a point because Eddie Murphy has like said something similar where whenever he does anything in Hollywood, they always use a picture of the fucking donkey from Shrek.
I was going to say donkey.
Oh no. There's a quote from Eddie Murphy where he says, if I die, I guarantee you that fucking donkey's going to be on the obituary page. So Nick Cage did have a point, but I think it's really funny that he was almost Shrek. And I kind of wonder what the film would have been like if they got Nick Cage to do it, because one of my favourite quotes about an actor is about Nick Cage. It's from Roger Ebert, I believe, where he said, Nicolas Cage is a great actor in good movies and an indispensable one in bad movies. Because he just gives 110% in every role he's in, regardless of whether or not the film deserves it. Cue that clip of him in that film where he's a vampire screaming, I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire.
I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire!
I always like him being Ghost Rider, so now I'm imagining Shrek being like, you can't live in fear.
Oh man, see, if Brad's feeling better, can we get him to just record the line, you can't live in fear, and just have it in? Because he used to do it so much and it pissed me off. Because every time, I'm like, Brad, stop quoting Nick Cage, and you just go, Karl, but you can't live in fear. It's like, stop saying that.
You can't live in fear.
Anyway, bringing it back to Shrek, when Chris Farley was voicing the character, he was very different. And Nisha, have you seen any early images of what Shrek was going to look like when Farley voiced the character?
Well, I've just clicked on the article to have a look, and I have now.
Yeah, that's not Shrek, is it?
No.
And there does exist out there some really rough early animation test footage with Chris Farley's voice on it, if people want to have an idea of what the character was going to sound like. Here's a clip.
Why don't you want to talk about it?
Why do you want to talk about it?
Why are you answering the question with a question?
Why are you asking questions I don't want to answer?
Why are you blocking?
I'm not blocking.
Then why do you have problems expressing your wants?
I don't. I want you to shut up.
And from that brief snippet of footage that exists, it's hard to tell what the character of Shrek was going to be, but it is known that the characterization was vastly different to what we got in the movie that was eventually released, and that has a lot to do with Mike Myers.
Okay, so what did Mike Myers do?
Well, when Mike Myers was brought on to voice Shrek after the unfortunate passing of Chris Farley, he was interviewed about it and waxed poetic about the reason he decided to voice Shrek. And he looks at the script and this is a really good script, and I especially appreciate the underlying message of accepting yourself for who you are. Anyway, the first thing I demanded when I accepted the role was a complete script rewrite that changed Shrek's character.
All right.
So Nisha,
Just make yourself at home.
So Nisha, the film's all about accepting yourself for who you are, like warts and all.
Yeah.
Anyway, I demanded a complete script rewrite to excise any elements of Farley's characterization that was present in Shrek. And on one hand, you can understand Maya's reasoning of like, I don't want to just riff on what Farley did. It would be more insulting to his memory to act like I could be him. But at the same, you can't do that after saying the film is great because it's all about accepting yourself for who you are, while you are literally demanding they change the character.
Yeah, accept who you are, but, also change it.
Yeah, accept who you are, but also change everything about yourself if you think it'll make more money. And his reasoning does make sense. It's just very, very funny when you put those two things side by side. Accept yourself for who you are, but also change everything about yourself on a whim if you think it's going to be funnier. Which brings us to Shrek being Scottish.
So did he originally voice Shrek as Scottish?
No, Mike Myers did not originally voice Shrek with a Scottish accent, and in fact, just voiced Shrek with his regular speaking voice. However, when Mike Myers was shown an early cut of the film, with rough animation in place, he sat there and went, "Who's this character?" And he said, "Oh, that's Lord Farquaad." And he looked at Lord Farquaad has a very upper class British accent, a very stereotypically posh accent. That doesn't contrast very well with Shrek's accent, which is just basically my accent. We should change that. We should make Shrek Scottish. And apparently one of the guys at Pixar was just pulling their hair out when they heard Mike Myers talking like this, going, he has no fucking idea how much work that's going to be. And they were trying to explain to Myers, look, we get it. You have a different vision for the character, but most of the rough cut is already done. What you're asking us to do would cost us millions of dollars. And there are probably people out there wondering, but if all the audio was already recorded, what difference does it make if Mike Myers did it all again with a Scottish accent? Surely they could just drag the audio and just drop it straight into the film. And that wasn't exactly the case. And Nisha, do you want to speak to the difficulties of syncing things up?
Yeah, so obviously if you're speaking with a different accent, you're gonna mouth words differently and act differently. So they have to reanimate the way he speaks as well, and his lips and stuff like that. And it's awkward enough lip syncing animation because I had to do it at uni. And it took forever. And what I had to do is I had to film myself talking, saying the lines, and then mimic that onto the animation. And it does take a lot of effort. So I can understand why they'd get frustrated.
And it's not just that Mike Myers wanted to do a Scottish accent for Shrek, it's that he wanted to be a lot more animated in his performance, which would result in them having to change the way Shrek was carrying himself in any given scene. Because obviously they animated it with the idea in mind that he'd speak just like Mike Myers, not with a really broad Scottish brogue. So they were as I said, pulling their hair out are you fucking serious? He wants to redo the entire film again with a bad Scottish accent. That's what we need to address. Mike Myers' Scottish accent is fucking shit. He's got such a shit Scottish brogue.
Yeah, it's that bad that I forget that Shrek is Scottish. And it's that bad.
Yeah, and one of the things that pisses me off about Mike Myers' Scottish accent is how long he's coasted on that one bad accent, because he uses it for Fat Bastard in Austin Powers.
Of course I'm no happy. Look at me, I'm a big fat slob.
It's literally the exact same voice. It's just him doing the Shrek voice. And then he uses it in the film Wayne's World. There's a scene in Wayne's World where Garth is scared of the film The Leprechaun. And leprechauns, Nisha, where do they come from? Stereotypically.
Ireland.
Yeah, and what accent do leprechauns normally speak with?
Irish.
Yeah, they normally speak with an Irish accent. What accent do you think Mike Myers does when he's pretending to be a leprechaun?
I'm going to guess he tried to do an Irish accent and then sounded Scottish.
No. He just does the Shrek accent again, which he thinks is a broad Scottish brogue.
Garth, I'm the leprechaun.
Cool it, okay?
I'm the leprechaun.
Stop it, all right?
Don't try and steal me pot of gold.
And you just look at something like that and go, it is amazing how far someone can coast on one thing. It's like when you look at Adam Sandler and he does the same stupid, whiny voice for every single one of his comedic characters, and it's just not funny. And he's been coasting on it for a decade.
I find it hard to watch his films. Like, I watched Grown Ups and turned it off halfway because I was like, I've not laughed once.
Yeah. And he just plays this, like the water boy. The character like that accent, he does that in every fucking film. And like Mike Myers been coasting on this bad Scottish accent for like 2 decades, I think, if not 3, because like Wayne's World came out in like the early 90s, late 80s, I want to say. So that's like nearly 30 years using the same bad accent. And then he made like DreamWorks pay an estimated $4 million to reanimate every scene they'd already done so he could re-record all of Shrek's lines in this bad Scottish accent. And for anyone wondering what $4 million amounted to, that was roughly 10% of Shrek's initial budget.
Fucking hell.
So they spent 10% of Shrek's budget making Shrek Scottish after already re-recording all his dialogue twice before. So Far Away Nisha, I think it's safe to say that Shrek is just like, it's one of those films that has stood the test of time.
Definitely. It's still iconic today. Like, it's in so many memes and videos.
It exists like through memes now. It's like got that mimetic quality, and that has allowed it to just like permeate throughout pop culture. And just as well, they're really good films. Like, you know, the first, the second one, and then the other 2, I guess, are all right. And then Puss in Boots kind of brought it back, but it was a spin-off, and I could take it or leave it, but I appreciate Antonio Banderas getting work. Like, Shrek 1 and 2, like, just 2 especially, is fucking untouchable. It's so good.
It is amazing.
We've talked on the channel before just about, like, the final, just, like, action scene of, like, the I Need a Hero bit.
It's amazing.
It's probably one of the best action scenes ever in a movie. And it still blows my mind to this day that Jennifer Saunders did the singing herself.
Such a good film. Like, I was looking at clips from the first film the other day, because I've not seen the first one in ages, because I always see the second one. And I forget how funny it is, like the bit where Shrek and Donkey get to Duloc, and the first time they get to Duloc, and they approach that mascot who's wearing that massive plastic Lord Farquaad head, and he runs around the queue line, like the barriers, and then Shrek just walks straight through it.
Yeah. Just a little thing. It's little moments like that are incredible, aren't they?
Wait a second. Look, I'm not gonna eat you. I just...
And then the bit where they get in and there's that display, that song display, where them little animatronics are singing.
Yeah.
Welcome to Duloc. I love that.
And just like Donkey, it just has the huge, big, shit-eating grin the entire scene, and Shrek could not give less of a fuck. He's like, let's watch it again! Oh, and then you just got like the little things, like just the like Lord Farquaad. It's like, many of you will die, but that is a risk I'm willing to take.
Yeah.
And then just like, you fast forward like 20 years, and people are just like photoshopping like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos' head onto that. As they're saying that, when you got news of them sending people, it's like, wow, Shrek was just so ahead of it. He predicted just dickhead bosses sending people to their death for profit.
There was that thing going around recently, which I was like, this is old news, which was where Lord Farquaad's in bed watching.
Oh yeah.
Where he's in bed looking at the mirror, and he's like, show me the princess, and he's like, ooh, and people are like, oh my god, it's so dirty, but you just noticed it, oh my god, like,
yeah,
no, everyone knew about that.
Like, he's just sat there, he's got a raging fucking chub on, it's great. And it's like, just the little bits, like, I love like the universe of Shrek, that it's like set in a fairy tale world, and it's like the little like sight gags they have, of like, they have a lot of reference like Grimm's, like, is in Grimm's fairy tale, and then you just have like just the blind mice are constantly in the background like falling off of things. He does like every scene they're in. And just like as well, like when you have like the final battle in Shrek 2 against like the fairy godmother, it just hits Pinocchio. It's like, I'm a real boy. I don't know why that cracks me up so much.